me on the Capital TV show, AliReza Jafarzadeh. He's Deputy Director, Washington Office, National Council of Resistance of Iran. You are most welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maria. Great to be on your show.
Thank you. Our subject is related to the lawsuit that the National Council of Resistance raised up. They accused Ibrahim Raisi of torture and murder in 1988 crackdown on Iranian dissidents. Can you elaborate more?
Yes, of course. This a lawsuit was filed in the Southern District of New York on behalf of several individuals who were either themselves subject to torture and mistreatment and appeared before the Death Commission in 1988, where Ibrahim Raisi was one of the 4 members of that Death Commission, or they had their family members executed as part of 30,000 political prisoners executed in summer of 1988, a majority of the members of the main opposition, the MEK. So they filed this lawsuit under the Tort Act and also Torture Victim Act that allows them to set up a record of Ibrahim Raisi under the charges of crimes against humanity and genocide. This will be the very first time that such a case is being filed against Ibrahim Raisi anywhere in the world.
Amnesty International and U.S. sanctions declarations accused Raisi of complicity in 1988 events. I want to ask you about the timing of this lawsuit and any relation between his attending to the UNGA meetings.
Well, the relationship through his attendance at the UNGA meeting is that you can file this lawsuit against a person who is present in the United States. So if he chooses to attend and puts his foot on the American soil, then he can be served, and then the case starts. There is already a judge assigned to the case. There's a date for hearing set up. There are lawyers already. The process has already started, but it requires Raisi to be in the United States in person for this case to proceed.
Schneebom said that, for one, Raisi is not a diplomat officially accredited to the United Nations. How we can explain that?
Well, the Iranian regime perhaps want to use diplomatic immunity either as a head of a state to dodge, appearing before court, or as a member of the diplomatic corps. But Raisi doesn't hold any of those 2 titles, because the head of the state, according to Article 113 of the Iran regime constitution, is actually the supreme leader. Ali Khamenei is the head of state. Even though Raisi carries the title of president, he's not the head of state. Second, he's not even a diplomat, because a diplomat is defined as either a member of the mission or like somebody like an ambassador, which he doesn't hold any of those positions. So he cannot use that cover. And that's why we feel, and the defendants feel, that they have a good chance of succeeding.
Did the U.S. State of Department respond immediately to questions of the view of Raisi's status?
They have not. They have just generally made, general statements that, they have some kind of an agreement with the United Nations, but that each case that they review is going to be, secret. However, I think they already feel the pressure from everywhere, particularly from the Iranian Americans, from those who are, waging their protests against Raisi's presence here. There is already a very large demonstration organized on September 21st, right in front of the United Nations, to coincide with Raisi's scheduled speech at the UN. This is going to be perhaps the largest ever demonstration by Iranian Americans coming from all over the United States. There are protests waged from the United States Senate, from the US House of Representatives. Very senior, prominent American officials have waged a protest to visit by Ibrahim Raisi here. So all of these will have to be taken into consideration, not to add the fact that Ibrahim Raisi is also involved in terrorism, in addition to crimes against humanity and genocide.
Inside Iran, there is lots of aggression, and also the Iranian regime is funding terrorism in the globally. What we can do about this?
Well, certainly, what's really happening inside Iran is so important, because the reason that Ibrahim Raisi was handpicked by the Supreme Leader Khamenei to become the regime's president is because of what's happening on the ground. There have been large-scale uprisings and nationwide demonstrations against the regime since late 2017 and early 2018. That has continued. People are chanting slogans against Khamenei, against the religious dictatorship, and now chanting slogans again, death to Khamenei, death to Raisi. That's the biggest asset the world has. There is an organized opposition, some of which who are actually the victims who are filing the complaint. The main opposition, the Mujahideen Khalq inside Iran, they have the resistance units that organize these demonstrations and ensures continuity. That for that matter, the regime, in order to stay in power, they brought in Raisi to put down the revolt, which they have not succeeded at all. In the past 1 year, they have failed. The demonstrations have continued. But also on the terrorism front, Raisi himself was directly involved in the plot to assassinate Ambassador John Bolton, because it was under his watch when he became president that initiation for terrorism started under Raisi. So these two fronts need to be addressed, by everybody, including the U.S. government.
How could the Iranian resistance revealed many secrets about the nuclear program inside Iran, and what is your role to defeat this regime and hold them accountable?
Well, the reason that the Iran resistance has been able to expose all of the major nuclear sites of Iran, but also their terror network, and also a lot of other activities they do in the region, because there is a very strong network all over the country consisted of this Iranian resistance. I mentioned the resistance units inside Iran. The main opposition, the Mujahideen Khalq, they have been fighting this regime for over 40 years. The regime has failed to crush them, has failed to destroy them. It only made them stronger. Now, with the rise of the protests going on inside the country, their role has become so significant, because the regime has no solution for the problems of Iran except just killing more people, which is the end of the road. The people of Iran are, even the people who were not involved in the protests a few years ago, they're all now involved. All sectors of society, including the poor, the deprived, smaller towns and cities have now gotten involved. And that's why we feel the regime is running out of its resources to stay in power. That's why it's emphasizing more on the development of nuclear weapons as a way to guarantee survival, but stepping up terrorism in the region and more killings inside Iran. There have been twice as many people killed under Raisi in the past 1 year than the year before. Even though this shows a level of repression, but it also shows the desperation of this regime. This regime is doomed to fall. It has never been so weak. And I think the prospect for change is brighter than ever.
Does this change will come through Mujahideen Khalq, especially with Maryam Rajabi? Is she the future president, gonna be the future president of Iran? Especially we see a big support from American figures and politicians, like we saw Mike Pence visiting Ashraf, and Mike Pompeo is is always on your panels. So how do you feel about it? Is the failure coming soon of this regime?
Well, absolutely. You mentioned, Mrs. Rajabi. In any movement anywhere in the world, leadership is very important, but also platform is important. The organizational capability is important, all of which this movement has. Mrs. Rajabi has headed this movement for many years. He introduced a 10-point plan for the future of Iran based on the vote of the population, separation of church and state, peace in the Middle East, gender equality, religious tolerance, and a non-nuclear Iran. And that platform has gained, and herself has gained the support of a vast majority of members of Congress, in bipartisan way, both in the House and the Senate, but also a lot of key policymakers have traveled to Ashraf 3, which is the headquarters of the Mujahideen Khalq outside of Iran. And, they believe, including Secretary Pompeo and Vice President Pence, that the biggest missing factor in the US foreign policy and the policy of Europeans over the past few years has been the lack of support for the organized opposition. They always invested on the regime, searching for moderates or hoping that just pressure by itself would be enough, not realizing that at the end of the day, it's those on the ground, those who are the resistance, or those who want to bring down the regime are the most effective tools for bringing change anywhere. And that's why I think the momentum that has been built around Mrs. Rajavi and her platform has never been as strong as it is today. And of course, the future belongs to the vote of the people of Iran. Mrs. Rajavi has said that her goal is to, after the fall of the Ayatollahs, is to set up for free and fair elections so that the people of Iran can elect their own representatives. And, if they choose Mrs. Rajavi to be their future leader, that will be the case. But at least from now until the transitional time, she has led this movement very successfully, and she has been very, very effective.
That's all for now. Thank you, AliReza Jafarzadeh. We will be in touch and updated about all your events. And thank you for being on my show.
Thank you so much, Maria. You're always a pleasure to be on your show, and wish you all the success.
Thank you.
Maria Malouf here. Please click to like and subscribe to Maria Malouf TV YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.